Hello, everybody. So I was trying to come up with like a clever name for this. I was going to do like an imam, a rabbi, and a priest walk into a bar was like what I was thinking. I was thinking of saying something like box office smash as like or that Syrian cinematic universe is overtaking the Ukraine cinematic universe. I don't know. I couldn't come up with something funny, so I just went with a basic description of what I'm going to be talking about. So, as per normal, whenever we do these updates, a lot of stuff has been happening and nothing has been happening. So, sorry if I haven't really been posting that much this week in terms of videos. I've just, yeah, I don't know. I haven't been feeling the best. I don't know if that's seasonal affective or just where I am in my cycle, but it is what it is. So, I was going to do a nice review of My Happy Marriage, and I was going to talk about that, but that's not going to happen. So we're just going to talk about this stuff first. So, yeah. So I hope everybody's had a good week. I guess I hope it's going to be a little bit better after we talk about all the insane stuff that's going on. So, yeah, let's just start out with talking about the Tucker Lavrov interview. So, Tucker Carlson went to Moscow again, and this time he interviewed Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia. Now, let me see. I think Lavrov has been foreign minister pretty much the entire time that Putin's been president. He served, well, not quite, but just about. He has been foreign minister since 2004. My understanding is that he has tried to retire several times, but Putin has continually asked him to stay on. So Tucker went to Russia. He had an interview with Lavrov. Lavrov is half Armenian. I don't know if that's interesting or not. Just he wanted to do more during the whole Pashinyan Armenian Azerbaijan war. It just didn't really work out because Pashinyan's a snake. But yeah, he has been foreign minister for 20 years now, widely regarded as perhaps the greatest foreign minister on earth. And that is from a variety of different people. Very skilled guy. The reason Putin keeps not accepting his resignation whenever he retires because honestly, there's not really anyone who can uh, take his place. So anyway, Tucker interviewed Lavrov, and Lavrov fortunately can speak English. He can speak fluent English, so he was able to do the interview fully in English. Um, and maybe I'll just play like 5 seconds of it just so you get the idea. He sounds like he has a very deep, like stereotypical Russian accent. He speaks very good English. I'm not making fun of his English, but Lavrov kind of sounds like the Russian villain from a movie, like a 19 like a 1980s action movie.
And Russia, I don't think we should be presenting our relations as, two guys decide for everybody. Not at all. It is not our style. We prefer the manners which dominate in BRICS, in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where the UN Charter principle of sovereign equality of states is really embodied. It was sabotaged by the government which was established after the coup
I don't
d'etat
know,
in
like
Ukraine.
doesn't he
There
kind of sound
was
like
a
that? Like he
demand.
could be in GoldenEye or like some 1980s, 1990s like Russian supervillain. I don't know. That's just kind of the impression that I got from it. So, this interview is up on YouTube. It is also up on Twitter, and it is up, interestingly enough, on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Russian government was also, I guess Tucker gave them permission to put it up, so it's also up on
And
the
Russia
the website. I think it's definitely it helps the interview out quite a bit. The fact that it's able to be in English and we don't have to rely on a translator. Overall, I would say I actually think this is substantially better than the Putin interview. While there was a lot less, somebody I think on my channel said, sorry, on Discord said something pretty funny that I'm disappointed there was no autistic like third century like 600-year-old treaties and like maps and playing with toy trains and stuff like that. But uh Lavrov is a lot better at getting to the point and staying on topic. So nothing he said was really, I would say, new. If you've listened to me or Alexander Mercouris or Daniel Davis or kind of any of the people who talk about the history of the Russo-Ukraine conflict from more of a neutral or even pro-Russian perspective, most of what he says is pretty much just a summary of that. He lays it out, though, from kind of an interesting perspective, just because he is obviously the foreign minister of Russia and he was there kind of behind the scenes for a lot of it. So he just goes through the history of the current conflict, what Russia's objectives are, why he thinks Russia's justified in taking territory, and stuff like that. So he goes through it. You can agree with him or disagree with him, but I think he does a good job of staying on topic. So he's just having a drink of water. Um, but yeah, so I think overall it was a good interview. I think I was very impressed by Lavrov. I was actually kind of excited about this just because a lot of people in kind of the more pro Russia, more pro like anti West side play him up a lot. And like listening to the man talk, I can see why. He is very good with his word choice. He's very good at being diplomatic. He definitely has a strong personality, though. I will say this though. I honestly think Tucker is really bad at doing interviews. I haven't watched too many of them because I've just honestly never been a big Tucker fan. I don't know why. I just something about him is always kind of I don't know if it's grated on me. He's just never really kind of been my thing. I find his personality really dorky. And I think it really came out in this interview more so than the Putin interview. Because I think the Putin interview, he could kind of be forgiven for like not really knowing what was going on because Putin was going on these autistic rants about like 800 AD, the Kievan Rus and stuff like that. And I can kind of get why he's befuddled. But like Lavrov is going on very much about stuff that happened recently. He's giving dates, he's giving names, he's talking about it. And like Tucker doesn't ask follow-up questions really. He doesn't ask for clarification. He doesn't challenge him. He doesn't try to point out like maybe something he's saying is hypocritical or play devil's advocate or anything. He just has a list of mostly like really boring basic questions that he asks. And once he's let his guest ramble on for like 20 minutes or like 10 minutes, he'll just move on to the next one with no follow-up. And honestly, I find it really like bad interviewing. Like a lot of the like there's a part I forget where it was, what the name of it was, but there was a massacre of like I think pro-Russians that happened early in the war. Constantine, you probably know what I'm referring to. And Lavrov went on for a couple minutes about how it wasn't reported in the Western media. And I hadn't really heard of it before. And it's like, Tucker, follow up. Ask him what he's talking about. Ask him what this big event is that and Tucker just doesn't. He just goes to like something completely different. And it just kind of feels very much to me like he's a Odessa. Okay. That I don't know, like I don't want to sound arrogant, but Tucker in this in the Putin interview just kind of comes across as a lightweight. Like he feels like because I've gone to jobs where I've done no background reading. Like I just go to the job, I figure the interview, I feel like I know what what I am set, what the job's about, what I'm gonna do, and then I find out I should have done prep work. I have no idea what the company is. I have no answers to any of the questions, and it's just completely and totally embarrassing. And that's kind of what I feel like with Tucker when he goes to these. It feels like he did no prep work. He didn't really think about it. He didn't come up with follow up questions. He didn't do any rehearsal. He just kind of goes there, reads like the most boring questions ever, like, oh, what about, do you think there's going to be a nuclear war? And like he doesn't like press the and I get it's hard when you're in Russia and you're interviewing senior political leaders in Russia. You can't press too much, but you can kind of steer the conversation and stuff like that. So I feel like he just kind of gets these like really good interviews, but I don't find him very good as an interviewer. So I don't know if that's like a controversial take, if that sounds like I'm just sour grapes or I'm just kind of shitting on Tucker or whatever. I just don't think like his interview was very good. I think Lavrov was very good. I if he was just gonna have like really lame, like terrible takes and not really explain anything, then I'm kind of happy that he just let Lavrov talk and didn't interrupt him. But as like a journalist or whatever, it was not good. It was not good at all. It's just such a missed opportunity, especially for an American audience. Like, and I think I get why people think Tucker is a propagandist, because he doesn't really challenge them or do follow-ups or anything like that. I think he's just not very good at doing interviews, and I think that's more like than him trying to be a propagandist or something. I don't know, it just, and once again, maybe this is me being arrogant. I know he's Tucker Carlson. I know he has a huge following. I know people in these circles love him, but he just comes across as not being like very bright in these. He comes across as like some CNN journalist who has no idea what he's even talking about, who just stumbled into this interview. So that's kind of my take on it. I think it's worth watching, especially if you don't really know the background, because I think Lavrov does a good job of laying out the background. Also, he's just kind of an interesting guy. Like I said, he has very much the deep Russian supervillain voice. And it's kind of, it's interesting to see what like one of the most highly regarded uh foreign ministers in the world is like. I'll say this, he is much better than Blinken. Like, you can say what you want about Putin, you can say what you want about Lavrov. Putin is so much smarter than Biden. It's not even funny. Like, it's just more professional and more competent. Like, if you've ever seen part of a Putin speech, Putin will do like 3, 4 hour speeches where he'll go through like statistics in excruciating detail and label off facts and names and dates and stuff like that. And you could say that's autistic and it's boring and he should be more concise, but the dude is definitely like very engaged. Like, he knows what's going on. He's intimately familiar with all the details of his country. Lavrov is intimately familiar. He's not a clown like Blinken is. Um, he's an actual professional. Blinken is probably the worst Secretary of State in U.S. history. I don't know. Is there somebody worse than Blinken? Like, I don't even know. Like, yeah, as Constantine says in the chat, like, you can say what you want about Kissinger, that he's a war criminal, that he's a scumbag, whatever, but Kissinger was not a stupid man. Um, you can say what you want about him. I don't think he was a stupid man. So Blinken is dumb, or just really, really, really arrogant, which kind of makes him seem dumb. So anyway, so that's the Lavrov interview. As to what's going on in Ukraine, just kind of more of the same. Russia's just, the Russian bulldozer is just kind of grinding forward. There's lots of desertions. They're just gradually taking territory. The situation just gets worse for the day. Once again, though, I don't know how long the whole war is going to last, because like I could see it. I can't see it being more than a year at this point in time. Like if I had to guess, and I don't really want to guess because every time I've guessed, it's just been a disaster, and I've been completely off when it comes to it. Um, but I would doubt this war is going to last more than 6 months. But don't quote me on that because I've been wrong before. And I think the Ukrainian army has shown more resilience than really anybody expected it to. I was thinking that they would be in surrender negotiations by July, by the end of the summer, and that didn't happen. So, and they're still kind of chugging along. I just don't know how long this whole thing is going to be just kind of limping along. The US is trying to force Ukraine to lower the age of conscription to 18, which is kind of pointless, to be honest. They could lower it, but um, there's not that many people in that age group. Ukraine has deathbed demographics. All it's going to do is just kill off what little of a next generation there was going to be, and just kind of completely wipe them out. So there's not really, in my opinion, a point to lowering the age of conscription. Also, once again, and people don't get it, you can't just conscript soldiers and throw them in the front lines. They're going to get killed or desert or run away. It takes something like 6 months to a year to train a soldier properly. Like even to get them just to a basic level of competency, I think it's about 4 to 6 months. To get them to be a professional, like who's okay, it's like a year. Like one of the reasons why Russia's taken so long is they give their soldiers, to my understanding, a full year of training or so before they get sent to the front lines. There's a lot of stuff involved. You have to toughen people up. You have to do drills over and over again until you can do them with your eyes closed. There's all kinds of stuff like stuff like that. So yeah, all those things have been kind of going on, and it doesn't really. They're just gonna basically kidnap like 20-year-old guys off the street, give them rifles, and throw them into battle against the Russians. There's nothing that like really can be done at this point in time. A it's just a disaster. It's just there's no point in continuing at this. Like the terms are going to be harsh. The terms are very harsh, but Ukraine doesn't really lose anything more than it's already lost by agreeing to what Russia's offered. So, just for those of you who maybe don't watch these updates too often, the terms that Putin has offered is as follows. The five regions, that is Crimea, Zaporozhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk, will be recognized de jure as part of Russia. The Ukrainian government will impose limitations on the size of Ukraine's army. They will amend their constitution to state that they will be forever neutral and agree to never join NATO. The Russian Orthodox Church will be unbanned. There will be legal protections for Russian speakers, and there will be denazification with the removal of the ultra nationalist militias. Is currently what the peace offer is on the table. Which, and Lavrov will go through this. Basically, the longer this war goes on, the worse the offer gets. Initially, the offer was Crimea and autonomy for Donbass, and not even its independence. That was in February 2022. But as this war is in its like third year, it's just not going to accept anything less than that. So the core issue, though, more so than territory, is the status of Ukraine and NATO, which is why this thing has continued to go on. Russia will never accept Ukraine joining NATO, and Ukraine will never accept that they can't join NATO. So it's basically just going to go on indefinitely. So that was basically it. It was never that. Okay, well, there's some other things. Ukraine had to agree to military limitation. There was going to be a joint security guarantee by Russia and the various Western countries. The core issue, though, and the core issue has always been Ukrainian membership in NATO. That's always been the question. That was something that was just never, neither side was ever willing to seriously negotiate on that. So the war can't end until that issue is resolved one way or another. And I just don't see how it can be resolved. It was not DNR and LNR were different countries. I don't think that that was. I'd have to go and look at the specifics. I'm pretty sure under Istanbul, they had some. They were still technically part of Ukraine, but they had some autonomy. I'd have to go back. There's been a lot of different agreements. I think Russia acknowledged them as being independent, which is what started the war. But I think they were willing to acknowledge them as part of Ukraine on the condition that they had like a whole bunch of additional provinces. Responsibility. I could be wrong. That's just what I recall. But regardless, I like I'm somewhat skeptical about some of the referendums that were held. Um, no, I Russia recognized both, but I think they were willing to allow them to reintegrate into Ukraine on the grounds that they fulfilled their part of the bargain. I don't know. I'll have to look it up and see. It might just be a case where it's a he said she said thing, and people were um kind of just back and forth on it, where people had different interpretations. But so that's the deal that's on the table. They've said it's going to just get harsher and harsher as time goes on. So, um, as I've said about the referendums in the past, I can understand skepticism towards Kherson and Zaporozhye. I don't think there's really any argument that, regardless of what conditions it was held under, uh, the the two Donbass regions would vote to join Russia. There was a lot of bad blood there. The Ukrainian government had been shelling them for like a decade or almost a decade prior to the start of the war. So I do think that those two regions not once again though, and Lavrov talks about this in I don't think it's unreasonable that Novorossiya would join overwhelmingly to join Russia. No, I know I'm just steel manning it, Constantine. I think they probably would. I think the margins that they had were probably bullshit, but do I think that like Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, all overwhelmingly wanted to join Russia? Yes, I do think that. With regards to Zaporozhye and her son, I'd have to look at it again and see. But the point is, like, so the point Lavrov makes is, well, you all recognized Kosovo. Kosovo just unilaterally declared independence with no referendum, with no election. Um, Russia at least had fake referendums. They at least did something more than that. Also, I think there was a better argument um, that the people in those regions wanted to be part of Russia and were being actively oppressed by the central government. Like, this is something that I feel we don't really have that much. There's not really a neutral observer. So the Russians will cry like crocodile tears. They'll play the victim. They'll say, um, Maidan. There's the whole Maidan thing. There was uh ultra nationalists came to power in Ukraine. They were conducting de-Russification. They'll talk about like ultra nationalist militias killing Russians. They'll talk about the Russian language being repressed, Russian books being burned. Lavrov actually went through a number of different examples of things that senior Ukrainian officials said about their plan to get rid of the Russian language. So I think there definitely is something there, but I don't know how much of that is Russian propaganda, because you have two sides. One of which was the Russian side is that there was a cultural, political, and to almost a certain extent, a like physical genocide going on in eastern and southern Ukraine. The West's claim is that none of this was happening. There was absolutely no oppression in these regions. And so I don't know. The truth is probably somewhere in between. I don't entirely buy what Russia said. No, Lavrov's point is that they don't recognize Kosovo because there was no election held there, but they believe that because they held referendums in those parts of Ukraine, they legitimately left it. And they also, the argument is that the degree of oppression that the Russians in Ukraine were suffering was much worse than whatever the people of Kosovo were suffering under Serbia. So, once again, you can agree or disagree with that. I'm just stating what the arguments are from both sides. Um, I think people always have to keep that in mind. It's not always necessarily who I believe. I'm just trying to give what the narrative is from both sides. So, I I think the truth is probably somewhere in between. If you want my honest opinion, I haven't really been able to find many sources that aren't very partisan on this issue, but I think there probably was a lot of repression of Russian culture and the Russian language post Maidan, um, particularly after the whole Donbass thing happened. So I do think that that was the case. Uh, Do you think Kuklinski will make it out of this war alive or living in Europe if or when Russian forces overwhelm eastern Ukraine? Yeah, there's always already been talk about him. He'll probably go into exile in either London or Florida with the homes he's bought there. Now, before we get into Syria, Justo is taking action. Justo is going to save Ukraine with, honestly, like the RGs are going to be rough this year because I had thought like maybe I shouldn't do it biannually. Is there going to be enough stuff? But no, no. There's a lot of retardation that we're going to have to cover here. So let's see here. So Canada has passed another sweeping gun ban. Canada has banned hundreds of what they call style weapons. We'll get to Lavrov talking about Turkey in a bit. Um, in a bit. Also, the Dnieper can't be the border because Ukraine would not be I've heard people talk about this. Basically, all of Ukraine's industry and mineral wealth is in the east of the country, and a lot of Ukraine's cities are on both sides of the Dnieper. So I'm not really sure if that is possible at this point in time. So let's just take a look at this. The federal government is adding hundreds more types of firearms to its banned list of banned guns and looking to send some of them to Ukraine. What he called assault style firearms to its list of banned guns, taking effect immediately. This is raising the number of prohibited guns up to 2,000, according to Public Safety Canada. The number of restricted firearms affected is 14,000. I'm sure it's way more than that. This is to celebrate the anniversary of the Polytechnic shooting in Montreal in 1989, when a gunman targeting women killed 14 and injured 10 others. So because, like, let's just think about it, how insane this is. So because we want to commemorate the anniversary of a mass shooting, we're just going to ban shit. Like there's not even an event that they're reacting to. It's just, oh well, this happened like 30 years ago, so we're gonna just ban some more shit. We're gonna have a forced buyback gun. Um, so they're gonna send these guns to Ukraine. Now, for those of you who don't know, um, there's already a limit, I believe, of 5 rounds in semi-automatic rifles in Canada. So, and we're gonna look at some of the guns that they banned. So the SKS, I think, is like the only actual rifle that they yeah, the SKS is the only actual, like, I think rifle that they give that they ban that would actually maybe be used in Ukraine, but it's been like gimped and it only has like a 5 round magazine or something like that. So they might be able to give Ukraine a cut. Oh no, right. No, this was not banned. Sorry, this wasn't banned. So they didn't ban the only thing that might have actually been used by someone in Ukraine. Maybe. He said First Nation Inuit use the SKS, so it might not be banned. It might just be banned though for non-indigenous people, and they're allowed to keep using it. So let's take a look at some of the guns that were banned. Um, because there's some crazy ones. Okay, 22 LR. So some of the guns that they're going to be giving to some of the guns that they ban that are allegedly going to go to Ukraine are 22 millimeter 22 caliber long rifles. So like this, for instance, they're banning the pink 22 semi-auto because I think that 22 is exempt from the magazine limit. So this gun will be going to the Ukrainians, this carbine, and they will be able to use this to fight the Russians. Now, some people might say, Argent, 22 LR is not really a military caliber cartridge. Um, I'm pretty sure that like body armor can stop dozens of rounds from a 22 LR, but they're going to use it, guys. The Russians are deploying hordes of gophers, and they're going to be sending them there. That's the plan. Is sending the 22 LR to it. We have a okay. Let's see here. There's some others. So that's the plan. So this gun is being confiscated because it looks scary. This is the pink version of it, but because it looks scary, because it's like plastic and it's a black gun, they're gonna confiscate it and give it to Ukraine. Because reasons. No, obviously they're not going to Ukraine. The Ukrainians would probably like complain. They like if you gave the Ukrainians like giving the Ukrainian soldiers a 5 round, um, a 5 round 22 millimeter, and tell them to go fight Russian soldiers. Like it's so fucking stupid. They're gonna fight gophers, like in Ukraine. Um, yeah, they're gonna fight the Orezhnik. It's so fucking dumb. Assault style 22 long rifles. This is where we are at the moment. So they're just taking guns. And it's interesting because a lot of people in Canada own guns. Despite how like crazily anti-gun the government is. Like there's a guy in my office who recently brought in some deer jerky uh because he went out and shot a deer. And he's like a hardcore liberal who complains constantly about Trump. Because I mean, if you've ever looked at what Canada looks like, most of the country is rural, is wilderness, um is forest or plains, and there's a lot of good things to eat. There's moose, there's deer, there's grouse, ducks, all kinds of like a lot of the better animals to actually eat. They may not be exotic, but deer are good eating, moose are good eating. I don't know if you're allowed to shoot bison in Manitoba, but uh, so um, but like so a lot of people do own guns actually, and a lot of people do actually hunt. People in urban areas hate them. They despise them. Like if you talk about uh, like that you go and particularly people who live in like whereabouts I live in Manitoba or whatever. Yeah, a lot of them will go hunting. They'll get a deer. They'll get the deer butchered. A lot of the time, I think they will let the butcher keep some of the deer meat as like uh in exchange for butchering the deer, and they'll get a whole bunch of steak and hamburger meat and maybe some sausage and lots of good stuff. But no, a lot of people own it. But like once again, they're rural people. They're little people. They don't matter. Um, there we go. This is scary. Actually, to be honest, that looks pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Is it like tactical? Is it kind of cringe? Yeah, but it also looks really cool. I'm not gonna lie. I would like to have I'd like to own that, to be honest. Um I wouldn't mind having one of those. So Charlemagne says it's an MP5. Yeah, it's uh there's like another guy. Let's see here. There's a okay, it's 22 millimeter. Let's see. Estimated number of guns per country. I think Canada, let's see. Okay, of countries that aren't in like an active war zone, yeah, Canada's near the top after the US. Like I'm not going to count Yemen cuz Yemen is in a civil war. I don't know why the Falklands is so high. That's interesting. Okay, New Caledonia, Serbia is really high, obviously post Civil War. Montenegro post Civil War. I mean Finland and Iceland make there's a funny article for a couple of years ago. Um no, Montenegro's not a war. I get that, but I mean there was a civil war there throughout the 90s, so there might just be a lot of guns left over from the breakup of Yugoslavia is what I meant. Um there just happens to be a lot in that area. Austria, I think there's a lot of hunting people do there. I think Czechia is fairly high on this list too. There's a lot of hunting people do. Lebanon's an active civil war zone. People were. It was one of the like funniest things. It was one of the things that kind of red pilled me on the whole like race issue. The whole like. Let me see if I can find it. Gun awash Iceland. Okay, this one. Why is violent crime so rare in Iceland? I love this one. Iceland is awash in guns, yet it has one of the highest one of the highest, sorry, one of the lowest violent crime rates in the world. I wonder why. I it's a good. Why is this the case? Why is it the fact that Iceland, like so many people, have guns? but there's like no gun crime. It's the mystery Scooby-Doo couldn't solve. It's also like how Finland has so many guns and there's not that much crime in Finland. These are interesting questions. I don't think we're ever going to resolve any of them. I'd imagine Austria is also like that. So is Liechtenstein and Norway. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. Why there's all those guns, but those countries like don't have super high gun crime. Um, so like I said, okay, so that's Justo's latest plan. Let us just take before we get into Syria. Let's see what else Justo has said lately because it's so cringe. Who even is this? Is that his children? I don't fucking know. They're reducing. That's him complaining, talking about reducing immigration. The future of AI is in Canada. Yeah, that's the Alvis is right. That is the issue. The issue is that Americans are irresponsible with guns. I remember back when I was working in Ontario for the Ministry of Education, they were like, we can't figure out why test scores are so high in Finland. Like we just can't. And they're like, it's the fish stew. That was the cope they came up with for why test scores were so high in Finland. It's like it's the fish stew. They're like it's because they eat fish stew there. That's the reason why like you don't have crime rates despite the high guns. It's just like yeah, that's 100% it. That's 100% it. Yeah, it's Republican. It's actually let me see here. We'll get to Syria in a second. What is it like in the okay. Okay, I'm seeing something. Like some of these dark red states where everyone has a gun, the murder rate is surprisingly not that high. Like Wyoming, it's not very high. Utah, Idaho, Why is West Virginia randomly lower? Why are New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine? Why is the homicide rate so low there, despite there being a lot of people who own it's the mystery Scooby Doo can solve. And I don't think anyone will ever be able to figure out what the correlation is with murder rates. It's always funny whenever they show like maps of the southern states and they're like, look, they're the highest in terms of this stuff. It's like I wonder why. I wonder why. Okay, anyways. So enough of that nonsense. Let's go on to Syria. Okay, so let's try to take a step back and talk about the whole Syria thing. Well, Iceland doesn't have low population density. At least I don't think it does. I mean, doesn't everyone basically live in Reykjavik? Um I think basically doesn't like pretty much everyone live there. Uh Discount Mongolians also murder each other on their reservations. I don't I don't like what you're insinuating there. Um, I don't like the insinuation. Okay, so let's just briefly go through the whole Syrian thing. I know I've covered it before, but I do a lot of streams, and not everybody hears every stream. So, Syria, you had something called the Arab Spring. I don't know if people remember the Arab Spring, but it's worth just briefly talking about again. I know I'm pulling up Wikipedia articles. I'm not using them for the I just mostly using them for maps. There we go. So the Arab Spring was something that happened under Obama, wherein you had this just massive wave of protests. They're kind of like colored revolutions they had throughout the Middle East that overthrew a number of existing Arab governments or led to civil wars and stuff like that. Um, so a number of countries underwent uh, uprisings, revolutions, coups, colored revolutions, all that kind of stuff. Like Yemen, this is around the time I believe when Yemen collapsed into a civil war, where the Hadi government collapsed. Then the what are they called again? The what are they called again? The people in Yemen. Houthis, the Houthis. That's who I'm thinking of. The Houthis. Yeah, the Houthis did their coup, and then we've had like a decade of civil war. It started in Egypt, where we had Musharraf. No, sorry, not Musharraf. Mubarak was overthrown, and then what's his name came to power. Mohammed Musai, Masaga, I forget his name. The head of the Muslim Brotherhood, Super Muslim Bros, came to power. Then he was overthrown by the military, and now you have El Sisi basically running a military junta in Egypt. You had so that collapsed. That collapsed. You had massive civil unrest in Iraq. Obviously, the Gaddafi thing happened. The Syrians, the Libyan civil war continues to this day. Sudan just became a shit show. We eventually recently had a colored revolution there, wherein the long term president, oh, what's his name? I think it was Bashir, Omar Bashir, was overthrown, and then that's led to the current civil war between the Rapid Support Forces and the Syrian army. We had the government of Tunisia overthrown, and just a whole bunch of other stuff. So all this insane stuff was happening. In a lot of places, the governments either collapsed immediately, or they were able to um, collapse or were overthrown. Now, the country that this didn't immediately happen in were Syria and Libya. So Libya had a brief civil war in which they overthrew Gaddafi and sodomized his corpse. However, East and Western Libya and the liberals and the Islamists don't get along, and they've just had repeated civil wars. It's been going through, like, there's been the government of national accord, there's been the government of national reconciliation, there's been the national unity government, there's been the Grand National Assembly, there's been the House of Representatives. You got this dude leading one of the House of Representatives side who's been made a field marshal. Like, just insane stuff just keeps happening in Libya, and it's just showing no signs of really stopping. The other case is Syria. Now, if we look at Syria, Syria is in a very strategically important area. So Syria borders Israel, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Turkey. Now, Syria is mostly Sunni Muslim, but the ruling class are Alawites. Now, the Alawites, from what people tell me, are not even really Muslims. They're like this weird syncretic mixture of Neoplatonism, Arab nationalism, and aspects of Shia Islam. But because it's politically convenient for both Iran and Syria to say that they're Shia Muslims, they're Shia Muslims. So the Alawites, I think, are about 10% of Syria's population. Let me see demographics of Syria. I'm just looking at what the religious breakdown is. Yeah. Okay, so the Alawites and Friends are about 13% of the population. Um, and then you have a Christian minority in the Druze. Now, I believe that the Christians overwhelmingly, Constantine, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure the Christians also overwhelmingly support Assad. So the Alawites kind of make up a ruling class wherein the Assads come from the Alawite sect, and they've stacked a lot of the money, the military and the government with their guys. Um, the military with their guys, so they control a lot of the commanding heights of the economy, military, and government. It's very similar to the Hutu and Tutsi. If you look at like Rwanda, for instance, if I'm getting too far off track, just let me know. I just trying to kind of explain some of these things. So currently in Rwanda, it is ruled by a Tutsi government, despite the Tutsis only representing 15% of the population. Like Paul Kagame, I'm pretty sure is a Tutsi. Yeah, is a Tutsi. It's basically a dictatorship under the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which is mostly Tutsi. Um, so it's kind of a situation like this where you have a very small but very powerful, united, and wealthy group who's able to control the rest of society. I don't know like where that would that's the kind of thing that would never happen in the West. But anyway, so Syria is in between all of these different countries. Now the problem is there's a couple of different problems. Okay, so firstly, maybe we'll just do this clockwise and we'll talk about all the different interests people have. So Turkey under Erdogan has been very resurgent. Erdogan wants to stake out his own, I don't know if you want to call it third position, but he wants Turkey to be a major player, at least in the Middle East, on its own terms. That its identity is not just going to be being America's lackey, that Turkey is going to become a powerful country. He thinks maybe Turkey could become a great power at some point in time. And he's very good at playing all sides. Now, the thing, and we'll get into this. Sorry, I'm sorry if this is just kind of a long thing, but I just think it's important that we go through all the context. So, Erdogan is it has its finger in a lot of pies. Now, the big problem Turkey has is the Kurds. So the Kurds live in a area around here, in the area of southeastern Turkey, northeastern Syria, and northern Iraq. And you have the Kurds kind of split between these three countries. Now, the Kurds are very left winged. They tend to be very left wing, like feminist, socialist. The main Kurdish organization was like the Kurdish Workers' Party. And they're very big on trying to form their Kurdish state, which would be coming out of the three separate countries. Now, there is a Kurdistan, which is one of the constituent parts of Iraq, which is actually the nicest part of the country. Oh, there are Kurds in Iran. I don't think there's very many Kurds in Iran, though. I don't think there's like a ton of them. But uh, Kurdistan is like the nicest part of Iraq because it's mono-ethnic. I'm pretty sure. Let me just look this up. Kurdistan. I think Kurdistan is largely like that's what Kurdistan looks like. It's kind of a disaster. It makes up a whole bunch of different parts of countries. Where is Iraqi Kurdistan? I think is like mostly. I think it's almost entirely Sunni and ethnically homogenous. So it's actually substantially more peaceful than the rest of the country. So Kurdistan region in Iraq. I think a number of Iraqi presidents come from Kurdistan, and they tend to have an oversized representation in the Iraqi parliament because they vote as a bloc. But anyways, so Turkey Turkey doesn't like the Kurds because they're not ethnic Turks. Turkey is very, I don't know if you want to use the term ethno supremacist, ultra nationalist, whatever. And they hate the Kurds. They think they're subhuman. They think they're scum. They tried to exterminate them back. in a number of incidents prior to World War One, and then I guess, kind of during and the immediate aftermath. They weren't really successful, but the Kurds keep trying to get independence. If you look at, let's see here, elections. If you look at elections in Turkey, you will notice something very quickly. Mm. Let's see, where's the map? Just trying to find where the most recent. Yeah, so if you look at it, um, inland Turkey, which tended to be more conservative, had a higher birth rate, so it votes for AKP or Nationalist Movement Party. The coastal areas tend to vote for the People's Republican Party. That is the party that the one that had low birth rates because they westernized, so they're kind of become semi irrelevant. And then we have I think it's called the Good Party or some Giesler name. The People's Equality and Democracy Party, which is feminism, progressivism, secularism, all that kind of stuff. And obviously Erdogan's a conservative. And so he hates them. The Nationalist Movement Party are like neo-fascists, so they hate them. The CHP is Turkish national or like liberal nationalists, so they hate them because they're secessionists. We have some other Islamist party who hates them, and we have the Workers' Party of Turkey, whoever the fuck those guys are. So basically, most people in Turkey hate the Kurds. If you've watched my playthrough of Suzerain, the Bloods are basically the Kurds. So that is kind of part of the issue. Now, Iraq is a country that I believe is majority Shia now. I think the demographics have switched over time. But Iraq, particularly after America pulled out, is mostly Shia-led and allied with Iran. Swordland is Turkey, and basically like almost exactly like Turkey. So the Iraqi government is largely allied with Iran. Iraq is a dysfunctional, failed state wherein power mostly comes from the Shia militias who are trained by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard rather than the actual Iraqi army. Jordan is not particularly relevant, but Jordan is an ally of the United States and Britain. Israel is occupying part of southern Syria that they've basically annexed and don't want to give back. Lebanon is always a shit show between the Christians, Shiites, Sunnis, and Israel. It's basically always in a state of civil war, but Hezbollah, which is allied with Iran, is also allied with Syria. Basically, if Iran wants any kind of influence over the rest of the Middle East, they need Syria. Syria is too big and too important. If Syria goes, they aren't going to be able to get supplies to aren't going to be able to get to Lebanon. It just also would give Turkey too much power. It's just a fairly large country. And Iran doesn't have that many friends as part of the axis of resistance, so they want to keep their belt of countries. So that's kind of how the situation is. So Syria has been ruled by the Assads for I think the last 30 years or so. Syria has gone through a lot of coups, a lot of regime changes over time. Currently it's governed by the Ba'ath Party, which is a secularist, I would actually call them anti-clerical party. So Baathism is basically the Arab version of fascism. Baathism means renaissance or resurgence. It is primarily I would call it a left-winged, kind of national socialist type ideology. It favors socialist economics, um, state control, vanguardism, but it also takes extensively from Arab nationalism. I think their policies got more conservative over time on stuff like gender relations, but I would say that they're fascist in that they take kind of radical Arab nationalism and the idea of restoring the Arab people to their former glory, combined with a lot of aspects of Marxist and socialist thought. So, because of that, they tend to be very benevolent to the Christian population compared to more Islamic governments. So, the Christians in Iraq and the Christians in Syria tended to support the Ba'athist governments. So, that, for a lot of reasons, though, puts them at odds. Sorry if I'm jumping around a lot, but we had the Arab Cold War, which was between the Pan Arab states and the monarch states. And for a long time, Syria was kind of the mortal enemy of basically everybody around them. Um, one second. I missed check. I'm waiting for a medication delivery, so I'm just seeing if I'll have to go for a minute at some point. Yeah, the founder of Baathism was I think he was an Orthodox Christian. I don't think he was, or maybe he was. I don't think he was Melkite. I think he was just an Orthodox, like Greek Orthodox or something like that. It specifically stressed the supremacy of the Arab people over any kind of religious concerns. The Baathists were actually anti-atheism. They were pro-religion in kind of a generic sense. It's weird though. It's weird. It's kind of like Peronism. It's probably one of the variants of fascism that I think is. Well, keep in mind the thing about fascism is it's very dependent upon the host culture and the circumstances of the time. Anyways, I'm sorry, we're getting way off topic. So, um, when the Arab Spring broke out, the Sunni population in Syria rose up against the government. This was largely backed by Turkey, the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the various Gulf states. And I think some of them are allied with Syria. But the point is, a whole bunch of foreign parties just started pouring in weapons into Syria. Basically, um, any group in Syria that said they were anti-Assad, that they were anti-government, that they were pro-democracy or whatever you want to put it, the U.S. would give like money and weapons to. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of like John McCain with the freedom fighters, and ultimately it would turn out that all of these people were actually Al Qaeda and would become the Islamic State. Kind of funny how that worked out because they just gave weapons and money to basically everybody. And so this led to the Syrian Civil War. So the Syrian Civil War has been going on since I think it's 2011 now. I think it's 2011. Yeah, the Syrian Civil War has been going on for 13 years. It's got to be one of the longest wars of all time at this point. So the situation was kind of, a lot of people expected the Assad regime to just collapse, but I think because the Christians, Ba'ath Party members, and Alawites realized that if their regime fell apart, they would get massacred and basically wiped out. That they were just going to hold on and do whatever it took. And the Assad regime was willing to basically be as brutal as possible to directly fight the rebels and to use the advantages it had. It had tanks, it had aircraft, it had a trained army. There was a lot of defections, there was a lot of corruption. Uh, a lot of just stuff happened. Like the whole thing was very complicated. You had constant Giesler ops from one party or another. Is Southern Front another group? Oh, I guess they are. Okay. Um. So anyway, so yeah, so that was happening. There are so many different factions in the Syrian civil war. The entire northeast of the country is mostly controlled by the Kurds. The Kurds are frenemies of the Syrian government. Sometimes they're allied, sometimes they're enemy. For the most part, they're neutral, and they have a bit of live and let live mentality when it comes to it. We had ISIS's big advance when a bunch of the rebel groups formed together and they overran large portions of central Syria and then went into Iraq. We had this pocket up here, just north of Aleppo, that has never really been able to be taken. The Syrian government actually managed to establish control over most of the country. Um, Outside of this pocket here, which is under American occupation, which is where the oil wells are, America has continued to occupy Syria's oil supplies, which is where the government got a lot of its money, and it used it to run the tanks and stuff like that. But yeah, they were able to over the Syrian Arab army was able to retake a lot of this. There was eventually, hopefully, going to be some sort of deal with the Kurds to give them autonomy. It's Assad is very stubborn. Um, I think kind of understandably, given how many people have tried to kill him over the years and overthrow him. He doesn't. A lot of people he just doesn't want to talk to. He won't pick up their calls if they kind of come out because he doesn't trust them. So there was always this part of territory in northwestern Syria that was occupied by the Turkish army. Yeah, like if you look at it, it says Syrian interim government and under Turkish occupation. So Turkey is the second largest army in NATO, and they just moved into a lot of the border areas, occupied them, and they allowed basically all of the jihadist groups and stuff to go there, and they just started arming them. And they've kind of been building up there, and Assad has never been able to fully resolve the situation because of all these areas that the jihadist groups occupy. So they've just been kind of regrowing in strength. The U.S. has been giving them weapons and money. Turkey has. Israel has. They're just kind of waiting to restart this thing whenever they had the chance. No, sorry, going back a bit. So the Syrian civil war was just kind of a mess. A whole bunch of stuff just was kind of going on. Sometimes the Syrian army would win, sometimes the Islamists would win. Ultimately, though, the Iranians, Iraqis, and Hezbollah came in large numbers. And as they were ideologically motivated, fairly well trained, and disciplined, they were able to perform quite well. And they started pushing the forces back. One of the big problems that Arab armies have is they suffer from basically continuously horrible morale. The morale tends to be really bad. People don't want to fight. They tend to run away. But because like Hezbollah, the Revolutionary Guard, and I think it's the Badr Brigade and Mahdi Army from Iraq are ideologically motivated, they actually do stand and fight. They are actually tough people. Like you saw in the last little bit, Hezbollah fought Israel to basically a standstill, and Israel just kind of had to give up and leave. Um, these people are like are serious soldiers. They got a lot of that experience in Syria. So they I think how it worked was the Assad government was gradually winning. Russia decided to intervene though on the side of Assad. So Russia did not, I think, send very many ground troops in. Now I'm not sure how much Wagner was a thing back in the 19 sorry back in the 2010s, but Russia sent in massive amounts of air power and missiles and stuff like that, and just blew the crap out of the Syrian rebels. And that combined with, I think they gave them weapons and money and all kinds of stuff like that. And the Syrian government was able to win a decisive victory. So let me see if I can find the military situation, like even just a couple weeks ago. The Syrian government managed to occupy a lot of the country. Since then, Russia has continued to give them support and stuff like that. So if we look at where the situation, yeah, that was the military situation prior to a little while ago. You had these tiny areas along the, or maybe not tiny, but these areas along the border that were protected by Turkey, so the Syrian army couldn't go there. I have this area here that's protected by America, and you have these random little spots that ISIS controls um, over out here. Now, what's interesting is in the south, there doesn't appear to have been any rebel forces. So if we look at the new map, it's, yeah. I mean, yeah, so this is how it's gone in like a month or two. This is literally like a couple weeks, is how rapidly stuff has changed. Uh, I see the Kurds are launching an offensive of their own and taking some territory. ISIS appears to have been scattered in the, and there's, I think that the main concern I have is just in the south. So kind of, I don't know once again if this was a intelligence failure, if this was a the Russians aren't watching kind of thing. Also, could we get some likes? Could we get some likes, please? It helps. It helps the stream out. It helps the stream out. But uh yeah, so we just, so I don't know what it is, but you just had a huge number of jihadi groups, the main one being, I think it's called HTS, just surge out from the border areas and just almost overnight captured Aleppo. Aleppo was just completely overrun. The Syrian Arab army didn't make any real attempt to fight or to hold it. They just fled. All these other territories that they took, for the most part, I don't think the Syrian Arab army has actually made any real attempts to stop any of them. They've lost Hama, which also fell basically without a fight. So the Syrian Arab army just keeps running away. I don't think there's been any real fights so far in this war. The Russians and Syrians are using their air power to bomb them, but in terms of the ground, the rebels are basically have just been able to run roughshod over everything. And so, once again, was this an intelligence failure? Was this a case of like the Russians weren't watching? They took their eye off of the prize, and all this stuff was going on. Um, all this kind of stuff was going on. Like, I don't know, or was like, I don't know. It seems like a massive failure on the part of Russia, Iran, and Syria, none of which I see as countries who have particularly bad intelligence networks. But yeah, they've launched this major offensive. Assad hasn't been seen much in public. There was, trust me, bro, rumors that he had fled the country, which I've seen no real evidence of. Um, the thing I'm the most concerned about as far as it goes is the southern front. Um, Taking parts of southern Syria right now, because I think for most of the civil war, southern Syria was largely a government stronghold. I don't think there was actually that much fighting there towards the middle or end of the war. It was mostly up in Aleppo. But like the Syrian government is soon going to be cut off from the coast. Uh, they're getting squeezed from both sides. Like, once again, if we look at a couple weeks ago to now, it's a fucking disaster. Just how bad things are going. Now, the cope that I've heard is that Syria is just falling back to more defensible positions. And I mean, to be slightly fair, like Aleppo is very close to where the Turks are occupying, so maybe it's just difficult to defend. It seems like a very obvious target, being the second largest, I think, city in Syria, that is surrounded basically by enemies of the Assad government. Um, but yeah, so they just surged across the border. They said that they were going to withdraw to Hama, to some more like defensible positions, and then stop the Islamists. That the Islamists were going to overstep themselves, overextend themselves. That doesn't seem to be happening. They just seem to be continually pushing forward, and the Syrian army is nowhere in sight. I don't know what's, because we've been having relative peace for the last couple of years, so I don't know if the army's just decayed, what's been going on, but it's just compared to how hard the Syrian army fought previously. It's not. It's kind of a an open question. Now, some of the geopolitics behind this is Turkey has wanted to come to some sort of agreement with Syria over a number of different things. There's a whole bunch of Syrian refugees living in Turkey that they want to send back. They want to do something about Kurdish terrorists who are operating on the Syrian side of the border. There's a lot of just internal problem, a lot of diplomatic problems. Now, Assad will not negotiate with Erdogan because he frankly correctly says Erdogan is a massive snake. I don't want anything to do with him because all he ever does, like I said, is just snake people. He lies. He goes back on his word. He plays all sides against each other. He's a massive backstabbing cocksucker. And all of this is 100% true. Apparently, like, him and Assad were like BFFs, or they were friends before the Arab Spring. And Erdogan was like the lead supplier of weapons to the people who were trying to kill him. And Assad doesn't really want to talk to Erdogan. He doesn't want to talk to him. He doesn't want to come to an agreement because he thinks he can't, it's not worth the ink that it's signed on. And once again, this is 100% true. This is Erdogan is a snake. He snakes everybody. But Turkey is too strategically important and too large, and its army's too powerful to not have to accept their shit. Like, I get the impression that Putin hates Erdogan, and he thinks he's a snake, and he's probably furious about this because Putin and him, I think, had a phone conversation literally the week before this offensive happened, and Erdogan obviously neglected to mention it to Putin, and he is not happy. But at the same time, unless he talks to Turkey and makes concessions, Turkey was going to keep arming and building up all the guys in the border regions. So that seems to be of what had happened. So whether this is frustration on the part of Turkey that they aren't getting anywhere with Assad, whether this is America and Israel trying to open up a second front. In Israel's case, this gets Iran off their back, Hezbollah off their back. It allows them to focus more on the whole Gaza situation and trying to make their next move. Uh, for America, this is deflecting resources from Ukraine. Anything Russia sends to Syria is something that they're not sending to Ukraine. Uh, Russia is something that they're not sending to Ukraine. So I mean, there is motive there. So you have this kind of alliance of Israel, America, and Turkey who are trying to deal with this. Um, Trying to kind of come to concern. Um, yes, I agree with you, Mauro, Alexis Fernandez. I'm mostly concerned with the remaining Christians in the Middle East. I mean, if we're gonna be like, if Canada's gonna be a country of unlimited immigration, can we just take the Middle Eastern Christians in? Like, I'm okay with that. I'd rather take them in than a bunch of like just random dudes from India. I'd rather like my only problem is they're gonna get here and they're gonna lose their identity and they're gonna get paused and they're gonna abandon their religion in like a generation. Um, I don't know if there's somewhere like more conservative. A lot of them move to Latin America. I don't know if maybe they can keep their identity a bit more there. I'd be okay with taking them though. Like I said, if we're gonna just have unlimited immigration, I'd rather take Christian Arabs who are in danger of genocide than just random people from Kashmir. So getting back to because people brought this up correctly. Um, by the way, Houston, I actually my mother made me a. So my mother did not like was not happy when I converted to Catholicism, and she was very hard on me. Um, she, however, as a peace offering, said she would paint me a painting of the Virgin Mary. There was a guy I forget his name, but he did art like Catholic art that had a I guess it almost had a slight kind of popish flair to it is a bit more kind of like modern. So I got her to paint me one and I have it up on my the wall in my room. And it's the same one I think it's the same picture as that Our Lady of Perpetual Help. So sorry for that digression, but just that I like that image of Mary. I think that's my favorite image of her. Anyway, so during the interview, Lavrov blamed America and the UK for this. He did not blame Turkey, despite the fact that it's obviously Turkey who's behind it. Because who else would be behind it? Let me see if there's that clip in, if I can find that clip from Trailer Park Boys quickly. Boys. Um, where is it? Oh, I'm just trying to find it. Maybe. I don't know. But basically, Ricky just says to Julian, I hear there's some bootlegging going on. You wouldn't happen to know who's behind it. And Julian's like, are you fucking stupid? Of course I'm behind it. Like, literally, who else would it be? What's my mother's denomination? She's liberal Mennonite. She's a liberal Mennonite who doesn't go to church. Um, so, uh, uh, I'm just trying to see if I can find. It's just a really funny scene. If I can't follow it in like a couple in a minute or two,
Bunch of little tiny crimes, and we got no worries. Like, life is perfect. Life is gonna be really good this year, and we're gonna make just as much money. We just, for fuck's sakes.
if any of you guys haven't watched Trailer Park Boys, I highly recommend it. It's hilarious. Um, yeah, it's funny. It takes place in Nova Scotia, I think. I think a lot of people in the U.S. really enjoy it. So we're having a meeting now between Turkey, um, Iran, and Russia to try to determine like what's even going to go on. Like how are we going to fix this? What's the conclusion going to be? And the question is, I think at this moment is, okay, so number one, The Syrian Arab army is, I think, continuing to just run away. They're incompetent. There's whole, I think, divisions that are defecting. Assad's only hope from a military perspective is Russia is deploying Wagner. Now, keep in mind, after Wagner's coup attempt or whatever that was, they aren't allowed to operate in Russia anymore. So they go to Africa or the Middle East or wherever Russia needs to send troops and have implausible deniability. Um, no, I was raised in the United Church of Canada. Um, I was raised in the United Church of Canada. So I didn't go to a Mennonite church, no. Which is actually the reason why I was so anti-Christian for most of my life. The United Church was a combination, I think, of the Presbyterian, Congregational, and Methodist Church, with like a couple other random Protestant churches thrown in. So it's basically kind of an amalgamation of every liberal Protestant denomination. Um, that is picture like the Episcopal Church without like their high liturgy. And that's a good way of putting the or any of the kind of traditions the Episcopal Church keeps. And that's a good way of putting it. Anyways, so they're waiting for Wagner to show up. Also, Hezbollah has recently gotten their agreement with Israel for a ceasefire, so Hezbollah is going to be able to come in. Iran and Iraq are rushing forces in. So if they can get there in time, they'll probably actually be able to fight. Now, I don't know. The problem, though, just is things are happening very quickly. Let me see. The most recent... I'm just trying to see if I can find a more recent northwestern Syria offensive. Okay, so we're at September. Okay, so here we go. So over the course of the last, let's see here, 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks. The last week, the opposition has grabbed all of this territory, all of this area in the northwest. The Kurds have taken some additional territory, and you have this big thing going on in the south. So this has been in like just over a week. This started November 27th. So Iran and Russia and Hezbollah can try to rush their forces there. It's just whether they're going to get there in time. And when they get there, they have to get organized. They have to set up supply lines. They have to figure out what the fuck's going on. It's not like there's stable front lines that they can just go up to. Like they're going to arrive there and they're just like, what are we even doing? Like it's just a complete and total disaster and state disarray. Also, and I haven't watched this because this sounds like the cringiest shit. Um, we have the leader of HTS, which is the main jihadi Syria, the main current Al Qaeda aligned jihadi group in Syria, and he had a CNN interview wherein they just played him up. It was like a puff piece they did about how like awesome he was. I think he literally said in his statement, "Diversity is our strength. We're gonna bring about tolerance." Like I don't know. He just said a whole bunch of buzzwords and like the West loves him and they're like HTS is amazing. Uh, I think they literally said that. Yes. They literally said diversity is our strength. Here we go. Since its latest offensive in Syria, HTS has stated diversity is our strength, not a weakness. Yeah. I wonder where these guys came from, and I wonder who's funding them. They're the officially recognized jihadist group. They're the official the official ones. Now they are listed as a terrorist group on the U.S. State Department website. We will see how long that lasts for, but probably they'll either remove them or they'll just rebrand them or something like that. And that is the what they're doing. That's the plan at the moment. That's the goal. So the U.S. is looking like they're just gonna back him. I think it's all just bullshit. They killed a bunch of Druze or forcibly. I don't know. I think they're just jihadis, but they're just pretending to for the media to try to make their Canadian and no, lost my train of thought there. Their backers in the West like okay with the whole thing. So I'm gonna be honest, the situation looks dire for Assad. I don't know if like the position was this bad even during the height of the Syrian civil war. Um I don't think it was like this bad. They at least were like somewhat stable lines, or they were at least putting up a fight. To my knowledge, I don't think the Syrian army has put up any fights so far. They're just running away. I think there is a feeling among the Russian government that if like the Syrians aren't willing to fight for their whole country, their own country, then why would the U.S. come in and bail them out? Why should Russia come in and bail them out? Why should Russia come in, waste money, waste time, and bail them out a second time? Like they feel they delivered Assad victory on a silver platter. They came in, they bombed the shit out of ISIS and all the other rebel groups. They were trying to come up with some sort of deal with Syria and like with Turkey, and Assad just shit the bed. He completely failed to take any kind of advantage of his victory, and it's just become like an orgy of corruption and incompetence for the last couple of years. And so I don't know if like they really want to bother saving him this time. If you notice, what they will say in all of their statements is the government of Syria. They will not say Assad's name. They'll say the government of Syria and the government of Syria and the like the legitimate government of Syria, but they will not say Assad. I think personally they've grown tired of Assad. Whether or not though they can find somebody to replace him in a timely fashion, I don't know. Russia and Iran and Lebanon, like in Hezbollah, might just come in and try to save Assad again because they're really no one else that they can back in the strategically important region. However, if Assad wins this one, I think it's without a doubt that they're going to be forced to negotiate. Assad is going to have to negotiate to Turkey. They're going to have to come up with some sort of deal. They're not going to tolerate it. Well, if you look at it, it is really narrow. Syria is in real danger of being cut off from the northwest of the country, especially since there's a big body of water there. So, yeah, it's a total fucking disaster. And it doesn't look like the front is stabilizing. Once again, maybe the Wagner fighters and the IRG and the Hezbollah fighters will get there in time. Um, but I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it at this point in time. Um, they have counterattack, but keep having to pull back. Supposedly 20k HST guys. So pulling back, I want to tell an anecdote from Eve Online. So the IT Alliance got invaded by the Northern Coalition. Now, the Northern Coalition, I think, was about had 4 times as many pilots as IT. So what IT decided to do is they were just going to turtle and stay in their stations and not come out and fight. So all of these guys, they just sat in their bases. They didn't fight the Northern Coalition. They didn't attempt to get the kick out the invaders. They just figured they get bored and then they could just kick out whatever's left at a later date. Now, what wound up happening is morale, to the surprise of no one, fell rapidly. And people like they just disintegrated. Fighting and losing would have been better because it would have slowed their enemies down and it would have like given some sort of morale or hope. But because they just decided to totally sit the war out, it just led to a total collapse and a bunch of like the core corporations that made up IT Alliance actually left and formed their own alliances. Actually, ironically, that was the war where the Northern Coalition, which was primarily made up of Goon Swarm, which was something awful users, and a variety of different European countries, defeated IT, which was mainly, I think, an American and European alliance. And then we had we had the drone Russian Federation, who, in a war of attrition, succeeded in beating the war of attrition and succeeded in beating the Northern Coalition, which collapsed and ceased to exist in the aftermath of it. So it's a bit like that. My autistic Eve Online rant. What is that? 12 dead initial death toll. Government and Russians selling. So I don't know. Assad is, if Assad goes into exile, it's over. But they're getting pretty close to Damascus. I don't know where he is. I don't know where he's located at this point in time. The Russians are asking their citizens to leave, which is not good. It's just it's just a mess. I think it's looking really, really bad. I think okay, I hate doing predictions because I'm normally wrong. If the line is not stabilized in the next 48 hours and large numbers of foreign troops begin arriving, I think Assad's finished and the situation isn't going to be salvageable. I don't think this is an issue where the war is at a stalemate and they just needed like a push over the top. I think that this is an unmitigated disaster, and I don't see them coming back from this at this point in time. It's just been too much of a mess, too quickly. I mean, the Syrian army should be able to has a decisive numeric advantage, so they should be able to deal with this, but they just can't. Rumors are they're pulling back the SAA to the capital. Sounds like Assad is going to have to flee. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to look like once we know more about what's going on. Let's see, is Wagner referenced? Wagner isn't even referenced. Wow. So it'll be interesting to see like what winds up happening, if they're going to just give up, um or what. Yeah, if the army won't fight the militia, well, I just don't know if the militia is going to get there in time. Like, they're very close to Damascus at this point in time. Assad's lost like half of his territory, or maybe like a third to 40% of his territory, including some very important areas in a really short period of time. And the rebels are showing no signs of really slowing down. Uh, so I just don't know if they're even going to get there in time. If they're going to get there in order to stop this. So that's where we are at the moment. The Syria situation is a unmitigated disaster for Assad. I don't think the regime is going to be able uh, to survive this. To be honest, I feel even if Russia comes in and saves them, what they're going to have to do, because my understanding is the Syrian civil war before Russia entered was largely a stalemate, or the fronts were moving very slow, and the injection of yeah, I think you covered low pay, morale due to sanctions, loss of oil fields in Russia, busy. So yeah, my understanding is the army that was stationed in Aleppo mostly defected. Um, a lot of them just defected and ran away. I mean, realistically, they were never going to be able to control the country with just 15% of the population indefinitely. So that's just kind of where we are at the moment. I don't know if we'll see just like total Alawite genocide, and or the remainder will go into exile in Iran or something like that. But once you see the Alawites actually start to flee, if that happens, that is where we're going to be going. So I think that mostly covers the developments this week of um between Turkey and Lavrov and Tucker. If people want, maybe I will cut this up, and I'll repost some parts of this just to do videos for a couple of days. I just haven't been feeling like super motivated. But I spent some time doing some research for this one. So anyways, I think I've rambled on long enough. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Just God bless you guys. Have a good weekend.